Hello everyone, welcome to my channel SW Metro official channel.
Robyn Brown has a horrible illness. Kody Brown paused to reflect, and in that pause, in that almost imperceptible break in his otherwise constant stream of words and frustrations, a world of meaning seemed to collapse and rebuild itself in the mind of the man who for years has been portrayed as the patriarch of a sprawling plural family that has now fractured almost beyond recognition, because illness, when it descends upon someone, is central to his remaining sense of love, loyalty, and marital devotion. As Robyn carries with it the weight not only of medical realities but of existential crises, emotional reckonings, and the surfacing of questions that had been suppressed for seasons of reality television and decades of shared life. And so while fans might at first think of Robyn in terms of drama, jealousy, and the controversies that have dogged her since she joined Sister Wives, what Kody sees when illness takes hold is not the polarizing fourth wife that fans often project their anger upon, but the fragile, complicated, deeply human woman he considers his true partner, the last wife still standing beside him after the exits of Christine, Janelle, and Mary. And in that stillness, in that reflection, he remembers the many times he defended her, the many moments when she carried the burden of being blamed for the collapse of a dream that was never hers alone to either save or destroy. And he begins to wonder whether the illness, horrible, perhaps chronic, perhaps mysterious, perhaps the sort of invisible ailment that doesn't just attack the body but the mind and the spirit, will rob him of the only person who has remained steadfastly at his side. Because if Robyn falters, if Robyn weakens, then the edifice of Kody's current life, the part that still resembles marriage and companionship, could crumble, leaving him alone in a way that no cameras could ever capture. No TLC storyline could ever soften, and no polygamous doctrine could ever resolve. And so his reflection takes on the hue of regret as he thinks of the ways he spoke harshly to his ex-wives, the ways he failed to listen to his children, the ways his temper and pride prevented him from seeing what was essential, but also the ways he may have taken Robyn for granted, demanding her constant support, her constant mediation, her constant willingness to be the emotional sponge for his pain, while she herself carried burdens that perhaps no one fully acknowledged. Because while Robyn was often cast as the manipulator or the favorite, she was also the woman raising children, blending families, enduring the resentment of sister wives, and holding Kody's hand through financial crises, legal issues, and spiritual disillusionments. And now that illness has appeared, suddenly everything shifts, because when someone is ill, even a person the audience thinks they dislike, the narrative changes from rivalry and blame to compassion and fear. And Kody, pausing in his reflection, sees the possibility of loss, and it terrifies him, because it's one thing to lose marriages through arguments, separations, and divorces, but it's another to lose a wife to something the heart and mind cannot negotiate with, something that does not care about confessions, reconciliations, or therapy, something that strikes with cold indifference. And in that pause, Kody remembers moments with Robyn that the cameras never showed, the quiet evenings when she reassured him that things would work out, the times when she told him he was enough even when the world said he was a failure, the way she leaned on him not just as a husband but as a protector when she feared being judged. And he realizes that if she is taken from him, or if her health is so damaged that she can no longer be the steady force she has been, then the world he built, flawed as it may be, will be shattered beyond repair. And so this reflection becomes almost prayer-like, almost an inner confession of a man stripped of his bravado, because illness exposes vulnerability not only in the sick but in those who love them. And so Kody sees himself reflected in her suffering, questioning whether he has been the kind of husband who could deserve loyalty in illness, questioning whether he has given enough comfort, enough grace, enough love. And while fans might still focus on the spectacle, on the drama, on the endless cycle of blame that has defined the later years of Sister Wives, here is Kody, pausing, reflecting, breaking the pattern if only for a moment, because the thought of Robyn Brown, the woman most associated with his survival as a husband, facing a horrible illness, creates in him a silence louder than any fight, a silence that speaks of mortality, legacy, and the fragility of human connection. And though the public may never know the full truth of her illness, whether it is real, imagined, exaggerated, or concealed, what is clear is that for Kody Brown, even one whispered word of sickness from Robyn is enough to bring him face to face with the abyss, where he must either choose to grow, to soften, to finally learn humility, or risk losing not just the last wife who stayed, but the last chance he has to show the world, and perhaps himself, that beneath the bravado and the dysfunction, there is a man who can love selflessly, who can care without condition, and who can reflect not only when the cameras demand it but when life itself pauses him, mid-breath, mid-thought, mid-episode, to confront what truly matters. Robyn Brown has a horrible illness. Kody Brown paused to reflect, is not merely a sentence but a perfect, self-contained microcosm of the entire Sister Wives saga. It is a stark tableau, a moment frozen in the chaotic amber of reality television that reveals more about the pathological dynamics of this plural family than 1,000 hours of staged interviews and manufactured drama ever could. To unpack it is to dissect the core pathologies of the Brown family structure, where perception is meticulously curated, hierarchy is ruthlessly enforced, and love is a finite resource doled out based on a constantly shifting metric of loyalty and perceived suffering. The illness, whatever its true nature, becomes almost secondary. It is the punctuation in a sentence about Kody Brown's ego, Robyn Brown's role as the perpetual victim, and the devastating marginalization of Mary, Janelle, and Christine. First, one must sit with the weight of Kody Brown. Pause to reflect. This is not a man known for his contemplative silences. His default state is one of performative agitation, a whirlwind of gesticulating anger, self-righteous monologues, and frenetic energy directed at everyone but himself. A pause from Kody is an event. It signifies a moment where the carefully constructed narrative requires a beat for maximum impact. This is not a pause born of genuine, empathetic concern for a suffering partner. It is a theatrical device, a conscious choice to let the gravity of the statement, his statement about his wife's suffering, settle over the audience. It is the reality TV equivalent of a dramatic organ chord in a soap opera. He is not reflecting on Robyn's pain, he is reflecting on the best way to present it, to frame her struggle as uniquely tragic and, by extension, his own burden as uniquely heavy. This pause is the curation of a storyline, the anointing of a new chapter in the family's history where Robyn, once again, becomes the sun around which all other planets, including Kody, must revolve. Then, there is the illness itself, the ever-nebulous horrible illness. Throughout the series, Robyn's health struggles have often been presented with a similar vagueness, a shroud of mystery that somehow amplifies their significance. Unlike Christine's postpartum depression or Janelle's pragmatic approach to her own health, Robyn's ailments are frequently discussed in hushed, grave tones. The specifics are less important than the aura of suffering they create. This horrible illness functions as the ultimate validator of her position. In a family built on a foundation of perceived inequality, where the three original wives constantly battled for time, resources, and affection, a tangible, horrible illness instantly trumps all other claims. It becomes the unimpeachable reason why Kody must be at her side, why resources must be diverted to her care, why the other wives' concerns, about their children, their finances, their emotional loneliness, must take a back seat. It is the ultimate get-out-of-jail-free card for any accusation of favoritism. How can one argue with a horrible illness? To question its impact or the resources poured into it is to be monstrously unsympathetic. Thus, the illness, real or exaggerated, conscious or not, solidifies her as the needy wife, the one who must be prioritized, effectively locking the other wives out of the running for Kody's dwindling reserves of empathy. This dynamic exposes the cruel hierarchy Kody engineered. The family was never a flat, equitable structure of four women sharing one man. It was a monarchy with Kody as the king and Robyn, almost from the beginning, anointed as the queen consort. The other wives were the supporting court, their value diminishing with every passing year and every display of independence. In this kingdom, a queen's illness is a matter of state. A courtier's illness is an inconvenience. We saw this play out in devastatingly clear terms during the COVID-19 pandemic. Robyn's fears and her children's need for absolute safety became the law of the land, a set of rigid protocols drafted not by mutual agreement but by decree from the mansion on the hill. When Isabel Brown, Christine's daughter, required major spinal surgery, Kody's response was not one of paternal terror and unwavering support. It was a logistical calculation weighed against Robyn's rules. His hesitation to go was a direct result of his primary allegiance to Robyn's household and its self-contained reality. Contrast his angst over Isabel's surgery with his pausing to reflect on Robyn's horrible illness. The difference is not in the severity of the medical conditions but in the hierarchy of the sufferers. One person's pain commands a solemn, televised pause, another's is met with a complaint about a potential 2-week quarantine. Furthermore, Robyn's identity within the family is inextricably linked to her performance of vulnerability. She is the tearful wife, the anxious wife, the wife who needs saving. This horrible illness is the ultimate expression of that role. It allows her to be the consummate victim, not through any malicious intent necessarily, but through a learned helplessness that has always yielded her desired result. More of Kody. Kody, in turn, is addicted to the role of the savior, the knight in shining armor. The original 3 wives, Mary, Janelle, and Christine, became, over time, too strong, too independent, too complicated. They had histories with each other that didn't involve him, they had opinions, they had needs. Robyn presented herself as a blank slate of devotion and need. Saving her from her struggles, be they emotional, financial, or medical, validates Kody's entire sense of self. It proves his masculinity, his leadership, his necessity. Therefore, a horrible illness is not just a tragedy, it is a relationship-renewing opportunity. It allows him to pause, to reflect on his importance as her protector, and to double down on the only marital bond that still makes him feel like a hero. Finally, this single sentence serves as the perfect epitaph for the original concept of their plural marriage. The principle of plural marriage, as they once proselytized, was about building a large, self-sustaining family unit where love was multiplied, not divided. It was about a sisterhood of wives supporting each other through thick and thin. But in this scenario, the illness of one wife is not presented as a family crisis to be met with collective strength. It is presented by the husband as a singular tragedy affecting his favorite wife.